Hey everyone! Tonight we dive into a world where power wasn't always spoken. It was shown through silent signals and subtle gestures. How did people navigate social rank without ever saying a word? From a glance to a hand's position, every move carried meaning in a society built on unspoken rules. So before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy what I share here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always amazing to see our global community come alive. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's settle into tonight's silent dance together. The subtle language of cloak length and fabric quality in crowds. Imagine yourself walking slowly through a bustling medieval marketplace, where a quiet conversation is carried not only by words but also by the very clothes people wear. Among the vibrant stalls, the subtle signals of status and trade whisper through the folds and hems of cloaks that speak softly about the wearer before any introduction is made. In a world where the spoken word was often crowded out by noise, the length, fabric, and trim of a cloak became a silent but unmistakable language, a code woven into everyday life. The cloak, that simple garment worn over the shoulders, was far more than protection against the chill. It was a social statement, a carefully chosen symbol of one's place in the intricate fabric of medieval society. Imagine the texture of coarse wool brushing against your fingers as you touch the hem of a tradesman's cloak. This woolen edge, sturdy and unpretentious, marked the wearer's connection to honest labor, a quiet announcement of skill and practical necessity. Wool was abundant, warm, and durable, and its presence at the hem suggested someone who moved through the crowded streets with a purpose grounded in craft and commerce. In contrast, envision the shimmering silk cloaks that occasionally caught your eye, soft and flowing, trimmed delicately with fine fur. Silk was an expensive, imported luxury, its smoothness a tactile symbol of wealth and access to distant lands. Fur trims, perhaps from sable or marten, added weight not only in fabric but in significance. Those cloaks announced higher rank with quiet assurance, allowing their wearers to pass through crowds unnoticed by name yet unmistakable by appearance. The rustle of silk and the subtle sheen of fur were like whispered introductions. No words needed for those who knew to read these signals. The length of the cloak was another deliberate choice. Shorter cloaks were practical, worn by those whose work demanded freedom of movement, artisans, merchants, and travelers. These cloaks barely brushed the knees, allowing hands to remain free and steps unencumbered. Imagine the steady rhythm of footsteps on cobblestones as these cloaked figures move purposefully, their garments flowing just enough to shield but never to hinder. Long cloaks, sweeping nearly to the ground, spoke of leisure and privilege. Nobles and wealthy merchants draped themselves in these voluminous fabrics, their cloaks trailing behind like a subtle banner of status. Such length required care and space, a luxury not afforded in crowded streets or among laborers. The very act of wearing a long cloak demanded servants or attendants, those who would keep the fabric from gathering dust or catching on rough stones. Picture the slow, measured pace of a lord or lady moving through the town square, their cloak whispering softly against the stone, a quiet declaration of their elevated place in society. Within the folds of these cloaks, the colors told yet another story. Deep, rich hues, burgundy, sapphire, emerald, were not easily achieved or affordable. They revealed connections to expensive dyes, often extracted through laborious processes involving rare ingredients imported from distant lands. More muted tones spoke of modest means, dyed with local plants and materials accessible to common folk. Imagine a cloak dyed with walnut husks, its warm brown shade a reflection of the earth and the woodlands nearby, worn by those rooted firmly in local tradition. The choice of cloak fabric and its adornment were governed not just by personal preference but often by guild rules, sumptuary laws, or community expectations. These regulations served to maintain the social order, ensuring that no one wore what was considered inappropriate for their rank. A tradesman caught in silks or fur might face censure, not merely for vanity but because these symbols had meaning that transcended fabric and thread. They reinforced hierarchy and identity in a world where social mobility was rare and rigid. Imagine the quiet pressure felt by a young apprentice born into a guild family, who knew that the woolen cloak was their inheritance, their visible marker in the crowded world. The fabric itself carried the weight of expectation, the skill of the hands that crafted it, the legacy of ancestors who shaped leather, forged iron, or stitched cloth. The apprentice's cloak was a daily reminder of their place, the rhythm of their lives tied to the loom of tradition. This silent language extended beyond individuals to entire communities. On market days, one might see the different cloaks mingling in the crowd, the fur-trimmed silk of a wealthy merchant brushing past the rough wool of a cooper or tanner. These garments delineated spaces within the urban fabric, guiding interactions and subtly shaping respect, suspicion, or alliance without a single spoken word. The cloak was a marker of identity as much as a shield from the cold. As you imagine yourself observing these crowds, the interplay of texture, color, and length weaves a picture of a society in which much was said in silence. The rustle of silk and the scratch of wool became part of the soundscape, a gentle undercurrent to conversations and commerce. The marketplace was not just a place of goods but a stage where social roles were enacted daily, and cloaks were the costumes chosen carefully to tell one story. This subtle communication through clothing persisted through the centuries, reflecting a constant struggle to balance individuality with communal expectations. The cloak was a daily companion, its fabric carrying both warmth and meaning, its length and trim a quiet herald of the life beneath it. Imagine how, even without modern labels or digital profiles, people conveyed identity and status with such nuanced precision. The cloak, its wool or silk, its length and fur trim, spoke volumes in the silent language of medieval streets. It was a rhythm of their lives, quiet, enduring, and always present, an unspoken conversation woven into the fabric of everyday existence. So, as the marketplace thrums with the murmur of deals and the shuffle of feet, remember that beneath the hum of voices lies a layer of silent dialogue, where the cloak speaks and the crowd listens, weaving stories without uttering a single word. The quiet signal of removing a hood when entering a room equals imagine stepping into a softly lit medieval chamber, where the air carries the muted scent of beeswax candles and aged timber. The room is quiet but charged with subtle rules, invisible yet deeply understood. As you cross the threshold, you reach up and remove your hood. A simple gesture, but one loaded with meaning. In this world, the act of uncovering one's head upon entering a room was more than comfort. It was a silent signal of respect, humility, and social awareness. Guests were expected to remove their hoods before the nobles, a deliberate act that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. In medieval society, clothing was a language in itself, and the hood, often part of a cloak or robe, served both practical and symbolic functions. Imagine the hood as a shield against the elements, a barrier between the wearer and the world. But within the walls of noble halls or formal gatherings, that barrier needed to be lowered. Removing one's hood was an unspoken acknowledgement of hierarchy, a humble offering that exposed the face as a sign of trust and submission to the social order. The timing of this gesture mattered greatly. Guests removed their hoods before the nobles did, signaling their deference and awareness of status. Imagine the gaze of a lord or lady noting whether a visitor's hood was lifted promptly or remained stubbornly in place. A bare head conveyed humility, an openness to social grace, and a recognition of the noble's position. Conversely, a hood left up, whether by accident, ignorance, or design, could be read as a quiet challenge, a refusal to submit to customary respect. This silent language extended beyond nobles and guests to all levels of society. Imagine a merchant entering a guild hall or a soldier stepping into a command chamber. Their removal of the hood marked their acknowledgement of the space and those who held authority within it. The hood's presence or absence was a form of nonverbal communication, a nuanced way to navigate relationships without confrontation. Yet the gesture was not always straightforward. Sometimes a hood left raised was innocent, a forgotten motion or a practical choice against a draft. But in the charged atmosphere of medieval protocol, intentions were rarely taken at face value. Imagine the murmurs that might ripple through a room when a newcomer failed to uncover their head, a subtle ripple of unease or suspicion. In a society where honor and respect were tightly guarded, such small acts could carry weighty implications. The quiet power of this custom also lay in its ability to regulate behavior gently. Imagine nobles using the simple act of hood removal as a test of a guest's social awareness and respect. It was a way to reinforce order without words or formal reprimand. The guest who remembered and complied was rewarded with unspoken approval. The one who hesitated or refused risked alienation or offense. This custom connected to broader ideas of appearance, identity, and social boundaries. The hood concealed, the bare head revealed. To remove the hood was to step into vulnerability, to present oneself openly and accept the gaze and judgment of those present. It was a ritual of trust and respect that, while subtle, reinforced the delicate hierarchies of medieval life. Imagine now the scene from the visitor's perspective, a moment of choice and awareness. The gentle fingers draw back the hood's fabric, the face emerging into the room's light. In that quiet act, the visitor declares their place, their respect, and their understanding of the social dance unfolding around them. As you step back from this scene, the hushed chamber feels alive with these small, meaningful gestures, where clothing and postures speak a language as vital as words. The removal of a hood before entering a room was a quiet signal, a ritual of humility and deference that shaped interactions and maintained the fragile balance of power and respect. Thus, the simple act of uncovering one's head was far from trivial. It was a carefully observed custom, a silent dialogue of respect, and a subtle test of allegiance. In medieval halls where honor was currency and social order a fragile thread, a bare head spoke volumes, and a hood left in place could echo with the quiet defiance of a rebellion unspoken. Imagine stepping into a great medieval hall, where the air is thick with the scent of burning wood and roasted meats, and the murmur of gathered voices fills the space like a gentle tide. Long tables stretch beneath high, timbered ceilings, laden with bowls of steaming stew, freshly baked bread, and flagons of spiced wine. Yet, amidst this lively scene, a subtle ritual unfolds, a dance of manners and meaning that governs how one may join the communal table. In this world, no guest simply claims a seat. Imagine yourself standing at the entrance, hands folded calmly before you, your posture steady but humble. You wait, not out of hesitation, but out of a quiet understanding that to sit unbidden would be to disrupt the delicate balance of respect and order that holds the gathering together. Your eyes meet those of the host, who surveys the room with measured attention, weighing not only your presence but the timing and manner of your approach. The moment the host gestures, a slight nod, a lifted hand, or a warm smile, is the key that unlocks your passage. This gesture is more than invitation. It is a silent pledge of acceptance, a recognition that you belong, if only for this shared meal. Observed by every eye in the hall, your movement from waiting to joining is a wordless conversation, a mutual acknowledgement of respect that transcends speech. Imagine the significance of this custom in a time when social hierarchies were tightly woven into daily life. The act of waiting to be acknowledged before approaching the table reinforced these hierarchies gently but firmly. It ensured that order was maintained, that roles were honored, and that no one disturbed the harmony of the gathering through impatience or presumption. This was a ritual rooted not only in etiquette but in the very fabric of community. As you step forward when invited, each footfall carries the weight of centuries-old tradition. The eyes of fellow guests, elders, and children alike rest upon you, marking your place in the social weave. The seat offered is a token of esteem and trust, a physical space that confirms your acceptance within the group. To rise or to sit without such acknowledgement would risk offense, a breach of unspoken rules that governed both respect and belonging. Throughout the meal, this initial moment echoes quietly. The shared glances, the courteous exchanges, and the measured tones all reflect the delicate dance begun at the threshold. The host's role, too, is shaped by this custom, bearing the responsibility to include with grace, to balance generosity with the needs and status of each guest. Imagine the gentle murmur of conversation rising and falling like waves, punctuated by the clink of cups and the rustle of robes. In this carefully ordered space, the custom of waiting to be acknowledged before joining the table becomes a symbol of communal harmony, a reminder that respect is as vital a part of the meal as the food itself. As the evening wanes and guests rise to depart, the memory of this quiet exchange lingers, a testament to the power of unspoken rituals that knit together individuals into a community. Imagine yourself once more at the hall's entrance, standing patiently, waiting for the subtle gesture that transforms a solitary presence into part of the whole. In this simple act lies the enduring language of respect, belonging, and the rhythms that shaped medieval life. The custom of waiting to be acknowledged before approaching a table. The ritual of touching a hat or cap to mark recognition of rank. Imagine a bustling medieval street lined with timber-framed houses and the muted chatter of townsfolk going about their daily tasks. Among them, a craftsman pauses briefly, his weathered hands steady as he gently lifts the brim of his cap, touching it ever so lightly in the direction of a passing nobleman. No words are exchanged in this simple act, yet a rich ritual of respect unfolds in that practiced motion. A subtle but powerful acknowledgement of rank and order. In medieval society, hierarchy was woven tightly into the fabric of daily life, shaping not only grand ceremonies but also the quiet gestures that punctuated everyday encounters. The ritual of touching one's hat or cap served as a silent language of deference, a way to honor those of higher status without interrupting the flow of conversation or demanding attention. Imagine how, with a mere touch of the brim, loyalty was expressed and social boundaries clearly marked. This gesture was learned early, practiced until it became second nature. Children watched elders as they navigated streets and marketplaces, noting how a slight tilt or touch of the headpiece communicated volumes. It was an unspoken contract, recognition of a superior's presence, acknowledgement of their rank, and a subtle promise to uphold the social order. No elaborate words were needed. The motion itself carried the weight of centuries of custom. Picture a guild hall, where masters and apprentices gather for meetings or feasts. The arrival of a senior member is met with a wave of brims raised in quiet salute, each movement a careful echo of respect. In these moments, the ritual binds the group, reinforcing roles and hierarchies without disrupting the camaraderie or work at hand. The ritual was more than mere formality, it was a safeguard of social harmony. By adhering to these small but meaningful gestures, individuals navigated the complexities of rank and privilege with grace and subtlety. Imagine the confidence it brought, to know exactly how to show respect without overstepping or causing offense, to move fluidly within a system that prized order and decorum. Even beyond the city gates, in rural villages or on roads leading to courts and markets, this gesture traveled with the people, a shared sign of civility and awareness. It was a physical language understood across regions, a simple yet profound way to maintain the delicate balance of medieval society. Over time, as fashions evolved and hats took on varied shapes and styles, the ritual remained constant. The touch of the brim endured as a quiet testament to the enduring nature of social codes. Imagine, centuries later, how this simple gesture continued to echo in cultural practices, reminding us of a past where respect was often spoken through the smallest acts. In this way, the ritual of touching a hat or cap was not just a habit but a living tradition. It was a silent conversation, a gesture laden with meaning that connected individuals to a larger social world. Through this practiced motion, loyalty was shown, rank acknowledged, and the rhythm of medieval life gently maintained, one subtle touch at a time. The practice of holding one's hands visible to show honest intent. Imagine yourself stepping into a bustling medieval marketplace, the murmur of haggling voices weaving through the thick air scented faintly with herbs, smoke, and fresh bread. Around you, traders and townsfolk navigate the crowded stalls, eyes sharp, movements careful. Amid this vibrant scene, one gesture holds quiet but profound significance, the simple act of holding one's hands visibly, palms open and empty, a universal sign of honest intent. This practice, deeply embedded in medieval daily life, served as a subtle yet powerful language, signaling peace, trust, and transparency in a world where suspicion often lingered just beneath the surface. In both markets and courts, where fortunes and fates were decided, showing empty palms was more than custom, it was necessity. Imagine the tension in a marketplace negotiation, where a single concealed hand might breed doubt and mistrust. A merchant reaching out with open hands invited confidence, demonstrating that no hidden weapons or tricks lurked beneath sleeves or cloaks. This silent communication spoke volumes in a society where formal contracts were rare, and reputation often meant the difference between prosperity and ruin. The roots of this gesture stretch far back, echoing through cultures and eras, but in medieval Europe it took on particular social weight. Imagine a crowded town square, where a person's hands, carefully displayed, could defuse suspicion or reinforce alliances. Concealed hands, by contrast, suggested hidden motives, stirring unease or even fear. This small act of openness helped to shape reputations swiftly and enduringly, creating an invisible code of conduct that governed interactions from simple trades to legal disputes. This visible honesty was not merely practical but also symbolic. Holding hands open was a gesture of vulnerability and trust, a willingness to be seen and judged fairly. Imagine the subtle cues exchanged, how steady the hands were, whether fingers trembled or relaxed, the positioning relative to the body, all read by attentive eyes as clues to character and intention. The marketplace and courtroom became stages where hands told stories, reinforcing social bonds or unraveling them with quiet efficiency. Yet, this gesture carried with it an unspoken awareness of the dangers that lurked in daily life. Imagine the threat of sudden violence in narrow alleys, or the fear of deceit by those seeking to exploit trust. Showing open hands was a risk as much as a reassurance. The practice balanced on a fine edge between safety and exposure, a dance of cautious transparency in a world where hidden daggers might await the careless. Within this framework, the interplay of visibility and concealment extended beyond hands alone. Imagine the layered clothing, the folds of fabric hiding tools or weapons, and the watchful eyes that sought signs beneath the surface. The gesture of open palms stood as a visible challenge to such concealment, a deliberate assertion of peaceful purpose amid uncertainty. Over time, this custom influenced not only interpersonal encounters but also broader cultural expressions of honesty and justice. Imagine legal proceedings where defendants and witnesses might be required to show their hands, a physical testament to their sincerity. The metaphor of open hands became intertwined with notions of truth and fairness, resonating through language and ritual. Yet, as with many customs, the meaning of showing one's hands was subtle and complex, shaped by context and nuance. Imagine a trader whose hands were open but whose eyes avoided contact, or a noble whose palms displayed wealth and power as much as honesty. These layered meanings created a rich tapestry of communication that extended beyond words, guiding social conduct in the absence of modern documentation or enforcement. In quieter moments away from markets and courts, the gesture still held significance. Imagine families greeting each other, neighbors sharing news, or artisans presenting their craft, all communicating trust and openness through the simple language of visible hands. This everyday practice wove through the rhythm of medieval life, a gentle reminder of the human need for connection and assurance. As you imagine yourself once again amid this scene, the murmur of voices, the scent of the earth, the shifting light, you can sense how such a small gesture carried profound weight. The act of holding one's hands visible was both shield and signal, a quiet yet potent expression of honest intent that shaped reputations and relationships with a subtle but lasting touch. In this way, the practice of showing empty palms in medieval society was not merely etiquette but a foundational thread in the complex social fabric, a delicate balance of trust, caution, and communication that echoed the rhythms of their lives, guiding them through uncertainty with an open hand. The silent rule that determined who walked ahead in narrow streets. Imagine yourself stepping into a narrow medieval street, where space is scarce and every footfall counts. The lane is crowded, with merchants, townsfolk, and nobles all sharing this confined passage. Here, movement is more than mere navigation. It is a silent dance governed by unspoken rules that everyone knows yet rarely speaks of aloud. The order in which people walk, who steps aside, who leads, is dictated by an invisible hierarchy, a subtle choreography ingrained through years of observation and practice. In these narrow confines, a person's place in line was not random but carefully observed and respected. Imagine a young child watching their elders as they navigate the cramped streets, learning from the way hands gesture slightly, eyes shift briefly, and feet adjust with practiced ease. This silent system preserved social order when words were drowned out by the noise of daily life. To move forward without proper place was a breach, as disrespectful as a loud insult, and could provoke uneasy glances or quiet murmurs. The rhythm of this choreography was steady and deliberate. Those of higher rank, whether noblemen, wealthy merchants, or officials, naturally took precedence, often walking ahead, their pace unhurried and assured. Their position was acknowledged by others without overt deference but through the gentle yielding of space. Imagine the subtle lean of a passerby's body, a slight step back into the shadows of a doorway, allowing a lord's cloak to sweep past without interruption. This yielding was not merely physical but social. It reinforced the hierarchy embedded in daily life, teaching respect through motion rather than words. For the common folk, stepping aside was both habit and necessity, a practiced gesture that kept peace in tight quarters. To hesitate or resist this unspoken rule risked social friction or unwanted attention. In the market, this silent rule was vital. Merchants moving goods, apprentices running errands, and nobles attending business all shared these pathways. Imagine the bustle punctuated by the shifting of shoulders and careful placement of feet, a constant but subtle negotiation of space and status. Even when strangers crossed paths, the dance played on, ensuring that the social order remained intact amid the chaos. Children learned this choreography early, watching adults adjust their pace and place with fluid grace. Imagine a boy apprenticing under a craftsman, walking behind him and instinctively stepping aside when a wealthier patron approached. The lesson was clear: knowing one's place meant moving in harmony with society's rhythm, a silent respect woven into the very steps taken each day. This unspoken order extended beyond narrow lanes to grander settings, processions, courts, and gatherings, where the positioning of bodies communicated power and privilege. Yet in the cramped streets, the silent rule was most intimate, a constant dance amid the daily ebb and flow of life. Imagine the streets at dusk, cloaked figures moving slowly as the day's work ends. The quiet rustle of garments, the soft shuffle of feet on stone, and the barely perceptible pauses as each person yields or leads, all these form a choreography that preserves order without a single word spoken. This silent rule, so essential to medieval life, reminds us how human societies have long relied on subtle cues and shared understandings to navigate complex social structures. It was a rhythm of their lives, a dance of respect and hierarchy that shaped each step taken down crowded lanes, a whisper of order amid the hum of daily existence. The custom of offering bread or wine only with proper gestures. Imagine yourself standing in the softly lit hall of a medieval household, where flickering candlelight casts gentle shadows on stone walls, and the aroma of freshly baked bread mingles with the rich scent of spiced wine. The moment is calm but filled with an unspoken rhythm, one governed not just by words or taste, but by subtle gestures and silent codes that shape how food and drink are offered and received. Serving bread or wine was more than a simple act. It was a carefully choreographed ritual where every movement spoke volumes about respect, status, and the intricate social order. In these settings, the way a cup was held or a loaf presented carried clear meaning. Imagine a servant approaching the table with a vessel of wine, fingers wrapped firmly yet gracefully around the stem or base. If the cup was raised high, it was a gesture of honor, signaling deference to the guest and acknowledgement of their esteemed position. This elevation lifted the drink almost ceremoniously, marking the recipient as worthy of respect and careful attention. Conversely, presenting the cup low, near the edge of the table or at waist height, suggested a more modest offering, an act performed with humility, reflecting the server's lower status or the practical function of service. These gestures extended to the offering of bread as well. Imagine a wooden platter carried steadily forward, the crusty loaves cradled in hands that convey both care and submission. The manner in which the bread was placed before the guest, whether gently laid with reverence or set down briskly, communicated the relationship between host, server, and recipient. In a world where social hierarchy was rigidly observed, such nuances were essential. A respectful presentation acknowledged the dignity of the guest, while a casual or careless one risked offense, even if unintended. The silent codes of serving food and drink also functioned as a language of power and obligation within the household and the broader social sphere. Imagine a noble host watching closely as their steward offers wine to visiting dignitaries. The careful raising of the cup signaled the host's respect and the importance of the guests, reinforcing alliances without a word spoken. Meanwhile, a poorly executed gesture could undermine authority or sow discord, demonstrating how deeply these customs permeated daily life. Training in these subtle arts often began early for those destined to serve or to participate in courtly or guildly ceremonies. Imagine young servants or apprentices learning not only the physical skills of carrying trays or pouring drinks but the significance behind each motion. The raising of a cup was practiced as a ritual, a nonverbal vow of loyalty and respect, while the offering of bread was taught as a sacred act of nourishment and hospitality, bound by tradition. At times, these gestures acted as a mirror to the social world's complexities. Imagine a guest deliberately holding their cup differently, perhaps lower than expected, signaling discomfort, resistance, or a subtle challenge to the established order. Such nonverbal cues were closely read and responded to, shaping the dance of power and deference that played out silently at every gathering. Beyond formal occasions, these customs helped maintain harmony and clarity in interactions. Imagine the quiet confidence of knowing exactly how to present or receive food and drink, avoiding misunderstandings that could escalate into offense. The silent codes smoothed social exchanges, weaving respect and hierarchy into everyday acts of sustenance. As you step back from this scene, imagine the gentle clink of a raised cup, the soft rustle of bread being broken and shared, moments where silence speaks louder than words. The custom of offering bread or wine only with proper gestures was a vital thread in the fabric of medieval life, a quiet language that bound people together in respect, tradition, and shared understanding. Thus, the simple acts of serving food and drink carried profound significance. Every raised cup or carefully presented loaf was a message of honor, a ritual of connection, and a subtle negotiation of social bonds. In a world where power and respect were communicated as much through gesture as through speech, these silent codes ensured that even the most ordinary moments resonated with meaning and grace. The expectation of lowering eyes in the presence of nobility, ChatGPT said, imagine yourself stepping into a grand hall where nobles gather beneath towering stone arches, their finely embroidered garments catching the flickering light of candle sconces. The air is cool, tinged with the scent of polished wood and faint traces of incense. Amidst this solemn assembly, every glance carries weight, every gesture a language of power and deference silently understood. Meeting the gaze of a noble was never a casual act. Imagine the subtle tension in that moment. A fleeting lock of eyes that could suggest familiarity or, more dangerously, equality. To look directly into a noble's eyes without invitation was to risk implying challenge, a breach of the carefully maintained social order that governed medieval society. Instead, lowering the eyes became a practiced, almost reflexive gesture, a quiet concession acknowledging rank and authority without words. Visualize a young servant or commoner entering the scene, heart steady but mind alert. Their eyes, trained by custom and caution, drop respectfully to the floor or glance toward their hands. This lowering is not merely an act of fear but a ritualized submission, a repeated gesture that echoes across centuries, binding individuals to a social hierarchy that defined roles and relationships. This expectation was deeply ingrained, taught from childhood and reinforced in countless social interactions. It was a language without sound, spoken through posture and gaze, articulating where one stood in the web of power. The lowered eyes served to smooth tensions, to prevent misunderstanding, and to affirm the noble's elevated place in the world. In this dance of respect, silence spoke volumes. Imagine the consequences of failing to observe this unspoken rule. A steady gaze held too long might be seen as insolence or disrespect, inviting reprimand or social censure. Conversely, a quick, respectful lowering of eyes could defuse potential conflicts, signaling acceptance of one's position and thus maintaining peace within the intricate social order. The repetition of this gesture shaped identities as much as it reflected them. For those born outside nobility, learning to lower one's eyes was part of understanding the boundaries of their world. It was a daily reminder of place, an external expression of internalized hierarchy that shaped interactions in courts, markets, and streets alike. As you imagine yourself within this scene, consider how this simple act, a lowering of the eyes, carried the weight of centuries of tradition, power, and unspoken agreement. It was a ritual that maintained order, protected privilege, and shaped the rhythms of medieval life. In that fleeting glance and its quiet submission, the social fabric held firm, woven by countless such moments across generations. The expectation of lowered eyes was thus more than mere etiquette. It was a subtle but powerful language of respect and restraint, a constant negotiation of presence and power in a world defined by rank and role. Imagine the layers of meaning folded into that single, downward glance. A gesture small in motion but vast in significance, echoing through history like a silent hymn to order and hierarchy. The obligation to step aside in doorways for higher status guests. Imagine yourself standing before a narrow, sturdy wooden doorway framed by stone, the threshold to a medieval home or guild hall. The space is modest but significant, a point of passage that carries with it an unspoken code of conduct. Here, even the simple act of crossing through this portal becomes a carefully observed ritual, governed by the invisible lines of social hierarchy. The obligation to step aside in doorways for those of higher status was a subtle but powerful gesture, shaping the flow of movement and respect without a single word spoken. In medieval society, hierarchy was not confined to grand halls or courts. It permeated the most everyday spaces. Doorways, those narrow gateways between rooms, streets, and worlds, became sites where social order was enacted physically and visibly. Imagine the lesser-born standing patiently just beside the lintel, their posture relaxed but attentive as a noble or senior guild member approached. Without a command or admonition, they stepped aside, allowing the person of higher rank to pass through first. This practice was so ingrained that it required no enforcement beyond the shared understanding of roles and respect. The doorway's threshold was a boundary not just of space but of status. Crossing it first was an honor reserved for those whose rank or privilege demanded acknowledgement. Imagine the soft scrape of a foot shifting aside, the slight bow of the head, the quiet awareness that this small act reaffirmed the social fabric that held communities together. For the one stepping aside, this was a demonstration of humility and recognition. For the higher status guest, it was a reminder of their place within the established order, a passage marked by deference from those around them. Picture a bustling household or guild hall, where guests and members alike move with practiced grace, each person attuned to these unspoken rules. The flow of bodies through narrow doorways becomes a choreography of respect, practiced daily and maintained effortlessly. This obligation extended beyond the individual to reflect broader social dynamics. Families raised children to understand these nuances from a young age, teaching them that honor was shown not only through grand gestures but also in the smallest courtesies. Imagine a child watching a parent pause respectfully by the doorframe, absorbing lessons in social harmony through quiet example. Moreover, this custom helped prevent conflict in crowded spaces. By establishing clear rules about who yields and when, the obligation to step aside in doorways maintained order without the need for overt authority. It was a system of mutual understanding that allowed diverse social groups to coexist peacefully in close quarters, whether in bustling market towns or within the walls of a manor. The physical design of medieval buildings also reinforced this practice. Doorways were often narrow and low, encouraging slow, deliberate movement. Such architecture made it impossible to pass simultaneously without contact, heightening the importance of yielding to rank. Imagine how this spatial constraint translated social hierarchy into the very flow of daily life. Over time, as social structures evolved and architectural styles changed, the ritual persisted in various forms. Though the strictness of medieval ranks softened, the echoes of this obligation remain in modern gestures of politeness and respect, a quiet legacy of a world where even the simplest doorway was a stage for social order. In this way, the obligation to step aside in doorways for higher status guests was much more than a mere custom. It was a lived expression of hierarchy, a daily choreography that shaped interactions and reinforced the bonds of medieval society. Through this practiced motion, waiting patiently by the lintel, yielding space without words, individuals participated in a ritual that honored rank and maintained harmony one measured step at a time. The quiet language of who touched whom first in greeting. Imagine yourself stepping into a medieval courtyard bathed in soft morning light, where the gentle rustle of linen and faint scent of wood smoke mingle in the air. Here, amid the quiet murmur of conversation and the occasional clink of distant tools, greetings unfolded not as mere formalities but as a delicate dance of subtle signals. The question of who touched whom first, a hand extended, a head bowed, a clasp exchanged, was a silent language of respect and hierarchy, mapping invisible lines of deference that governed social interaction. In this world, the wrong sequence could chill the warmth of goodwill into cold offense, altering relationships with quiet, unmistakable force. The act of greeting in medieval society was a ritual fraught with meaning. Imagine two figures approaching. One may offer an outstretched hand, the other a slight bow, or perhaps a gentle clasp of hands. These gestures were far from spontaneous. They were learned, observed, and expected, a social choreography passed down through observation and tradition. Each movement carried significance, signaling awareness of rank, age, and social standing. A higher status individual might expect the first touch or bow, while a subordinate's initiation could be interpreted as overstepping boundaries. In marketplaces, noble courts, or village gatherings, this quiet protocol guided encounters. Imagine a merchant greeting a lord. The merchant would bow first, eyes lowered, while the lord might respond with a nod or a hand extended only after deference was shown. Conversely, among equals, a handshake might be more immediate, a gesture of mutual recognition. This nuanced interplay served to affirm social order, maintain respect, and avoid offense in a society deeply conscious of rank and privilege. The consequences of misreading this silent language could be significant. Imagine a scenario where a younger apprentice reaches out before his master bows, or a lord fails to respond in kind to a vassal's gesture. Such slips might cool relationships, invite gossip, or even sow seeds of resentment. In a time when words were weighed carefully and reputations shaped destinies, these nonverbal cues formed an essential part of communication. The social fabric was woven as much from gestures as from spoken agreements. Beyond the public sphere, greetings held intimate weight within families and communities. Imagine elders acknowledging younger relatives with a gentle clasp or a respectful nod, reinforcing bonds of lineage and care. Children learn these rituals early, absorbing the delicate balance of submission and dignity that structured their world. This quiet language became a framework for understanding one's place and responsibilities, grounding identity in subtle but powerful ways. Moreover, greetings often blended physical gesture with symbolism. Imagine the slight lowering of a hood, the careful placement of a hand over the heart, or the measured pace of approach, all elements that enriched the meaning beyond mere contact. These layered customs reflected the complexities of medieval society, where honor and respect were currency, and appearances carried weight beyond words. As you imagine yourself once again in that sunlit courtyard, sensing the coolness of stone beneath your feet and the soft murmur of voices, you can feel the importance of these small gestures. The question of who touched whom first was a quiet conversation, a dance of hands and heads that spoke volumes without a single word. It was a ritual that maintained harmony and respect, navigating the invisible lines that connected people within their tightly woven communities. In this way, the silent language of greeting in medieval times was both an art and a necessity, a delicate balance of deference and recognition, choreographed through simple acts that shaped relationships and preserved social order. The ritual of removing gloves before receiving a favor or token. Imagine yourself standing quietly in a dimly lit chamber, where a small favor or token is about to be exchanged between two individuals. The air is still, and the soft rustle of fabric carries a gentle weight. In this moment, a seemingly small gesture holds profound significance: the removal of gloves before the hands meet. This act, practiced with quiet care, was more than etiquette. It was a ritual that spoke of sincerity, respect, and the delicate dance of social interaction. In medieval and early modern societies, gloves were common accessories, crafted from leather, fine cloth, or even embroidered with care. They protected hands from the cold, concealed imperfections, and in some cases, displayed wealth and status. Yet, paradoxically, the very gloves that spoke of refinement also served as barriers, subtle shields between individuals. To accept a favor or gift with gloved hands was to suggest distance, a polite indifference, or a hesitance that undermined the connection being formed. Imagine the smooth, worn leather of a glove slipping slowly from a hand, fingers emerging bare and vulnerable. This removal was never rushed or careless. It was performed with a deliberate quietness, a wordless signal that the recipient was opening themselves fully to the exchange. The bare hand, exposed and unguarded, became a symbol of sincerity, a promise that the favor was received with genuine gratitude and that the giver's goodwill was honored without reservation. This ritual was deeply embedded in the rhythms of social life. Whether in the courtly halls of nobles or the modest chambers of merchants, the removal of gloves before receiving a token was understood as a necessary prelude to trust. Imagine the delicate touch of silk or velvet against bare skin, the slight coolness contrasting with the warmth of a human connection. This moment bridged the divide between formality and intimacy, allowing two people to connect beyond mere words. The importance of this gesture extended to legal and diplomatic contexts as well. In treaties or contracts, hands were often stripped of gloves to signify the earnestness of agreements. Such rituals underscored the weight of promises made and accepted, weaving together personal honor and societal expectation. Imagine the tension in a chamber where delicate negotiations unfold, the removal of gloves marking a boundary crossed from polite formality into earnest commitment. For those of lower status, gloves might be simpler, less decorative, yet the act of removing them carried the same gravity. Even among tradespeople and artisans, the bare hand conveyed openness. Imagine a craftsman accepting a tool or payment, fingers emerging from worn gloves to grasp the object. This simple act grounding the transaction in respect and mutual recognition. The removal of gloves also spoke to the body's place within the social fabric. Hands are instruments of work, of touch, of creation and destruction. Concealed within gloves, hands could mask the marks of labor or disease. Revealed, they laid bare the traces of one's life. Calluses, scars, or smoothness alike told stories. Imagine the subtle reading of hands exchanged during these moments, silent narratives of effort and experience passing between giver and receiver. This ritual echoed larger themes of visibility and concealment. Just as cloaks and garments signaled status through fabric and length, so too did the gloves frame social distance. Removing gloves was a step toward transparency, a shedding of barriers that allowed human connection to surface amid the formalities of daily life. In imagining these moments, one might also sense the care taken to maintain decorum. No glove was removed abruptly or clumsily. Instead, fingers peeled from leather or cloth with practiced ease, the motion almost a dance repeated countless times across generations. This choreography of hands held meaning, a rhythm woven into the fabric of social interaction. While such rituals might seem subtle or quaint from a modern perspective, they carried real consequences. To neglect the removal of gloves could suggest disrespect or coldness, fracturing delicate social bonds. In a world where honor and reputation were vital, these small gestures were essential threads in the tapestry of trust. Imagine the faint scent of leather mingling with candle wax, the whisper of fabric sliding against skin, and the brief warmth of bare hands meeting in exchange. These sensory details anchor the ritual in the lived experience of past centuries, inviting you to step gently into a world where meaning was found in the quietest motions. Even amidst the harsh realities of medieval and early modern life, where disease, conflict, and hardship were constant companions, such rituals offered moments of grace. They balanced formality with humanity, weaving respect and sincerity into the everyday flow of interaction. The ritual of removing gloves before receiving a favor or token was a silent language of trust, a reminder that connection often begins with the simple act of opening one's hand. So as you imagine yourself in that chamber, standing amidst the soft light and the rustle of fabric, remember that history often whispers through these small, deliberate acts. In the quiet removal of gloves, you glimpse a world where the sincerity of a bare hand carried the weight of meaning, and where human connection was tenderly woven through ritual and respect. The custom of remaining standing while superiors sat at table. Imagine yourself entering a grand medieval hall, its walls adorned with tapestries that tell stories of valor and lineage, the flicker of candlelight dancing upon heavy wooden beams. A long table stretches before you, laden with carefully prepared dishes and goblets filled with wine. Around this table, nobles sit with a measured ease, their positions marked by carved chairs and subtle cues of rank. Yet as a guest or servant, you remain standing, upright and attentive, until the unspoken invitation comes to take your seat. This silent custom framed every meal in precise social order, a ritual of respect and hierarchy woven seamlessly into the rhythm of dining. In medieval society, the act of sitting or standing during meals was far more than comfort or convenience. It was a visible expression of one's place within the social hierarchy. Imagine the tension in the air as newcomers enter the hall, eyes lowered in deference, bodies poised yet restrained. Standing while superiors sat was a mark of humility, an acknowledgement that the privileges of ease and rest were reserved for those of higher rank. The simple posture of remaining upright became a physical manifestation of respect, patience, and awareness. The timing of sitting was carefully governed by etiquette. Imagine the noble head of the household or the most senior lord surveying the room before signaling who might join the table. Until that moment, all others remained standing, sometimes for what felt like long stretches, demonstrating their understanding of social boundaries. This wait was not merely procedural but carried symbolic weight. It underscored the separation of ranks and the grace expected of those who sought favor or acceptance. This custom extended beyond nobles and guests to servants and attendants, who often stood at attention throughout the meal. Imagine servers moving silently between tables, offering food and drink while maintaining a posture that reflected their station. Their upright stance reinforced their role as facilitators rather than participants, their presence respectful yet unobtrusive. The act of remaining standing also shaped the atmosphere of communal meals. Imagine the soft rustle of garments, the quiet shuffle of feet, and the subtle exchange of glances as individuals awaited their turn to be invited. The social dance was choreographed with precision, and standing was as much about patience and discipline as about respect. It created a rhythm to the meal that reinforced order and decorum, reminding all present of the invisible hierarchies that governed their interactions. At times, this custom could be a source of tension or discomfort. Imagine a younger noble or a favored guest eager to sit, yet restrained by protocol until the invitation came. The restraint required was a lesson in humility and self-control, virtues prized alongside honor and loyalty. For those unaccustomed to such strictures, standing while others sat might feel an awkward reminder of their place within the social order. The importance of this custom was often reinforced through training and observation. Imagine children and apprentices watching closely as elders took their seats, learning the subtle cues and gestures that signaled permission. This education was part of broader lessons in manners, respect, and the navigation of social structures, preparing them for their future roles within the complex tapestry of medieval society. The physicality of standing also had practical implications. Imagine the fatigue that might set in during long meals, or the attentiveness required to maintain proper posture. Yet, these bodily demands served as reminders of discipline and dedication to social harmony. Standing became an act of participation in a shared ritual, binding individuals to a collective understanding of order and respect. As you step back from this scene, imagine the solemnity of the hall, the quiet authority carried by seated nobles contrasted with the poised readiness of those who stand. The custom of remaining standing until invited to sit was a silent yet powerful expression of medieval social order, a daily ceremony where posture spoke volumes, and patience became a virtue as tangible as the food on the table. Thus, the simple act of standing while superiors sat was far from trivial. It was a carefully maintained tradition, a gesture of deference and recognition that framed each meal within the precise hierarchies of the time. In a world where social order was as vital as sustenance, this quiet custom ensured that respect was visible, tangible, and deeply felt by all present. The practice of kneeling at the edge of a noble's circle. Imagine yourself in a grand chamber, where the heavy drapes soften the fading daylight and the flicker of candles casts gentle shadows on stone walls. The air is thick with the mingled scents of beeswax, polished wood, and the faintest trace of lavender, an aroma carefully chosen to soothe nerves and sharpen minds alike. Around a cluster of finely carved chairs, a circle of nobles engages in quiet conversation, their voices low and measured, weaving words that carry weight far beyond their gentle tone. Now, picture a supplicant approaching the circle, not with bold steps or a raised voice, but with careful humility. Instead of breaking into the conversation, the figure lowers themselves onto one knee at the circle's edge, a posture that speaks volumes without uttering a single word. This act of kneeling is a gesture loaded with meaning, a silent request for permission to speak, an acknowledgement of the authority gathered within, and a display of respect that transcends language. This ritual was not merely about etiquette, it was a vital part of the social fabric that held medieval courts and councils together. In a world where hierarchy governed every interaction, to interrupt was to risk offense, to presume equality was to invite censure. The supplicants kneeling signaled their understanding of these boundaries, a physical manifestation of submission balanced delicately with hope. Imagine the sensation of the cold stone beneath bent knees, the rough fabric of coarse garments brushing against polished floorboards. The supplicant's gaze remains lowered, steady but deferential, while the noble's eyes meet briefly to acknowledge the presence without breaking their shared discourse. Then, a single nod, subtle but unmistakable, breaks the quiet tension. This simple gesture grants permission, opening a small window for the supplicant's voice to enter the circle. The weight of that nod carries the power of acceptance or refusal. Without it, any word spoken would ring hollow, their speaker marked as presumptuous. With it, the supplicant is momentarily elevated, their concerns or requests invited into the realm of decision and consideration. This delicate balance between silence and speech shaped the rhythm of many such encounters, where patience and timing were as crucial as the message itself. The practice of kneeling at the edge of a noble's circle reflects broader themes of medieval life. The constant negotiation between individual desire and social constraint, the dance between power and humility. It was a moment where bodies spoke as clearly as words, where posture became language, and presence was shaped as much by restraint as by assertion. Historical records and accounts from chroniclers often describe these scenes with quiet reverence, noting the importance of such rituals in maintaining order amid the complex hierarchies of medieval society. They reveal a world where every gesture, every movement, was laden with meaning, a silent choreography that held communities together as surely as laws or contracts. Imagine how this ritual played out across countless halls, from royal courts to the chambers of wealthy merchants, shaping interactions that affected not only individuals but entire communities. The supplicant's kneeling was a moment suspended in time, a small but profound act that bridged divides of class and power, asking for acknowledgement in a world ruled by unspoken rules. As the conversation continues, the supplicant's voice, once invited, may carry pleas, petitions, or news, its weight measured against the steady authority of those seated. The response, too, is often measured, framed in the same tone of deliberation and gravity that marked the entire gathering. Here, in these quiet exchanges, the pulse of medieval governance and social life beats steadily, marked by ritual and respect. Picture the scene drawing to a close as candles gutter low, shadows stretching long across stone floors. The supplicant rises slowly when dismissed or granted leave, the motion deliberate and composed, reflecting the lessons embedded in the ritual. The nobles return to their circle, the conversation weaving on as if uninterrupted, but the memory of that humble kneeling lingers, a testament to the subtle power of silence and gesture in shaping medieval life. Imagine yourself in this measured moment, feeling the balance between hope and restraint, between speaking and waiting. The practice of kneeling at the edge of a noble circle was more than protocol. It was a living language of respect and hierarchy, a constant negotiation that defined the rhythm of their lives. It reminds us that sometimes, in the quietest gestures, history's deepest truths reside. The silent rule of who tended the fire in a shared hall. Imagine stepping into a large medieval hall, where the evening light dims and the warm glow of a central hearth casts dancing shadows on stone walls. The air carries the gentle crackle of burning wood, a comforting soundtrack to the gathering of family and guests. In this shared space, the hearth is more than a source of warmth. It is a symbol of the household's heart, a place governed by silent rules as old as the stones themselves. Among these unspoken customs, the rule of who tended the fire was one of the most respected and carefully observed. Imagine the household head, perhaps an elder with hands marked by years of labor, seated near the hearth, the flickering flames reflecting in their steady gaze. The privilege of tending the fire, adding logs, adjusting embers, or wielding the poker, belonged solely to them or, on rare occasions, to an honored guest invited into this intimate role. To reach for the poker unbidden was to cross an invisible boundary, a quiet breach of decorum that could unsettle the delicate balance of respect within the hall. Picture a younger family member, perhaps a son or a servant, hesitating just before the fire, knowing that the fire's care was not their place unless expressly granted. The air holds a gentle tension, not spoken aloud but understood deeply. The hearth is the elder's domain, a seat of authority and trust. This silent rule underscored the fire's role as a center of power and unity. Tending the hearth was a physical expression of stewardship over the household's well-being. The person who managed the flames symbolically controlled the warmth, safety, and comfort of all within the walls. By reserving this task for the head of the household or honored guest, the family acknowledged hierarchy and mutual respect without uttering a word. In moments when a guest was invited to tend the fire, the act became a gesture of profound honor and trust. Imagine the shifting of seats, the subtle nods exchanged, as the household head offered the poker with deliberate grace. This passing of responsibility transformed tending the fire from a mundane chore into a ceremonial act, deepening bonds and signaling status. The consequences of breaching this silent rule, while not marked by harsh words or punishment, were equally clear. An uninvited hand reaching toward the hearth invited a cool glance or a slight withdrawal of warmth in social terms. The offender might find themselves quietly reminded of their place, their respectfulness questioned in the subtle dance of household dynamics. Beyond decorum, this rule helped maintain order in a space where many lives intersected. The hearth was often the hub of activity, meals cooked, stories shared, decisions made. Allowing only certain individuals to tend the fire prevented confusion, disputes, or accidental mishaps that could arise from too many hands at work. Imagine the careful choreography that kept the flames steady and the hall peaceful. This tradition also reinforced the broader social fabric of medieval life, where roles and responsibilities were clearly delineated and honored. The firekeeper's role was one among many rituals that shaped the rhythm and hierarchy of domestic and communal spaces. Even as centuries passed and household technologies evolved, the symbolic importance of tending the fire remained a powerful reminder of respect and order. It echoes today in the subtle ways we recognize leadership and honor in shared spaces. So, when you envision that hearth glowing softly in the heart of the medieval hall, imagine the quiet authority held in the hand that tends the flames, the privilege reserved for those entrusted with care, a wordless rule that shaped the warmth not only of fire but of family and community itself. The custom of waiting to eat until a superior lifted their spoon. Imagine yourself seated in a grand medieval hall, the long wooden table stretching before you under the soft flicker of candlelight. The air is thick with the scent of roasted meats, fresh bread, and spiced wine, yet despite the tempting aromas, a quiet stillness holds the room in gentle restraint. No voices break the hush, no hands move toward the dishes, everyone waits. The reason is simple, yet profound. No one may begin to eat until the highest-ranking person at the table lifts their spoon. This unspoken custom governs the rhythm of the meal, weaving respect and order into the very act of breaking bread. In medieval society, hierarchy permeated every facet of life, and the dining table was no exception. Imagine a noble feast where lords, ladies, and their attendants gather. The moment the lord raises his spoon, a silent signal passes through the room, releasing the collective pause and allowing the feast to begin. Until then, stillness reigns, an atmosphere thick with anticipation and disciplined patience. This practice reinforced social order, subtly reminding all present of their place within the complex hierarchy. The custom demanded a keen awareness of one's surroundings and a readiness to respond without hesitation. Imagine the eyes of diners shifting respectfully toward the Lord's hand, the faint clink of silver spoons breaking the silence as the first bite is taken. This simple gesture carried weight beyond nourishment. It was an assertion of authority and a bond of community. The act united those present in a shared moment of respect, acknowledging leadership while fostering togetherness. This waiting was not merely a matter of etiquette but a lesson in restraint and attentiveness. Imagine young apprentices or servants observing these meals, learning the rhythms of power and propriety through silent example. The practice taught that patience and awareness were virtues, integral to participating in social life. It was a ritual that bound individuals together, aligning their actions with the invisible currents of authority and respect. Beyond the formal halls of nobility, echoes of this custom could be found in more modest households. Imagine a family gathered for a meal, the head of the household's gestures signaling the start of sustenance and conversation alike. In such moments, the silence before the first spoonful became a quiet expression of unity and shared understanding, connecting daily life to broader social values. The stillness that filled the hall before the first spoon was lifted also carried a contemplative quality. Imagine the flickering shadows cast by candles dancing across faces attentive and poised, the pause inviting reflection and appreciation. This moment of collective waiting, though brief, created a space where respect transcended words, manifesting in synchronized silence. As you imagine yourself in this medieval setting, the weight of tradition settles softly around you. The custom of waiting to eat until a superior lifted their spoon was a subtle but powerful ritual, an unspoken contract of respect, patience, and social harmony. It shaped not only the pace of the meal but the flow of relationships, binding participants in a shared dance of deference and community. In this way, the simple act of raising a spoon became a profound signal, guiding the rhythm of dining and life itself in medieval society, an enduring reminder that even in silence and stillness, communication and connection thrive. The expectation of passing through gates in order of rank. Imagine yourself approaching the towering gates of a medieval city, their heavy wooden doors framed by worn stone and iron. These gates were more than mere entrances. They were thresholds that marked not just a passage from outside to inside, but a subtle transition in social order and status. The act of passing through these gates was a ritual as old as the city walls themselves, a silent ceremony of hierarchy where rank determined position without a single word exchanged. As the crowd gathers, the highest-ranked individuals step forward naturally, their movements assured and unhurried. Imagine a noble lord or a senior city official leading the way, their cloak barely brushing the ground as they approach the gate. There is no need for announcements or invitations. Their precedence is recognized by all. Behind them, others fall into place, each knowing their position in the line, a practice sequence that has been observed countless times before. This ordered procession reflects the city's social fabric, where rank and privilege were woven into every moment of daily life. Passing through the gate first was a privilege, a mark of honor that silently reinforced status. It was an unspoken agreement. Those who held power and prestige led, while others followed, accepting their place with a quiet understanding. The rhythm of this procession was deliberate and calm. Imagine the soft murmur of footsteps on cobblestones, the rustle of cloaks, and the faint clinking of metal as the line moves steadily forward. No one rushed or pushed. The sequence was rehearsed from youth, a choreography embedded in the rhythm of their lives. Children watched and learned, growing into their roles in this silent hierarchy. Beyond the practical function of controlling entry and exit, city gates served as stages where social order was enacted daily. The highest ranked, be they aristocrats, wealthy merchants, or city officials, were granted precedence not by decree shouted aloud, but through the collective understanding of all who stood in line. Their position at the front was as natural as breathing, a quiet assertion of their place in the world. For those of lower rank, falling behind was both a necessity and a lesson in humility. Imagine a craftsman or a servant accepting their place toward the rear of the procession, moving steadily and without complaint. This acceptance maintained harmony and ensured the smooth flow of movement through the gate. Resistance or disorder here could disrupt not just passage but the delicate social balance. The city gates thus functioned as more than physical barriers. They were symbolic portals that reinforced social structures. The act of passing through was a moment where individual identity was quietly subsumed into the collective order, each step echoing the rhythms of respect and tradition. Imagine the light filtering through the gate's open archway, catching dust motes in the air as the procession moves forward. The soundscape is filled with soft footsteps and the occasional murmur, punctuated by the creak of the gate's heavy hinges. In this scene, the sequence of passage is as telling as any spoken greeting or formal ceremony. This expectation of order at the gates was mirrored in many aspects of medieval life, at feasts, in courts, and during public events, where rank dictated position and privilege. The city gate was simply one of the most visible and routine stages for this quiet assertion of hierarchy. So as you imagine yourself standing among the crowd at the city's edge, sense the rhythm of feet moving forward in unison, the unspoken acknowledgement of rank guiding each step. Here, at the threshold between worlds, the highest ranked lead the way without a word, and all others follow in a practiced sequence, a silent testament to the enduring order woven into the fabric of their lives. The ritual of rising from a bench when a superior entered. Imagine yourself seated on a simple wooden bench in a modest medieval hall, the air faintly scented with hearth smoke and aged timber. Around you, the low murmur of conversation stirs softly, punctuated by the occasional clink of a cup or the rustle of fabric. Suddenly, the heavy door creaks open, and a superior enters the room, a lord, a guild master, or a respected elder. Instantly, without a word spoken, those seated rise in unison, their bodies moving in a smooth, single motion. This ritual, the act of rising from a bench upon the arrival of a superior, was a silent but powerful gesture, a quiet declaration of respect deeply ingrained in medieval social life. To remain seated in the presence of someone of higher status was to claim equality or, worse, to show disrespect. Imagine the sharp gaze of a noble sweeping across the room, noting who has risen and who lingers in place. The simple act of standing carried immense weight, signaling recognition of hierarchy and acceptance of social order. It was a physical expression of humility, a wordless acknowledgement that status commanded deference. This gesture was so ingrained it became almost instinctive. Imagine generations of children learning from their earliest days to rise promptly when a superior entered, training their bodies to respond reflexively to the unspoken command of rank. The timing was crucial. Rising swiftly and smoothly demonstrated attentiveness and respect, while hesitation or refusal could be interpreted as insolence or challenge. The ritual extended beyond formal occasions to everyday gatherings. Whether in guild halls, village meetings, or family chambers, the arrival of a superior triggered this moment of collective acknowledgement. Imagine a room full of craftsmen pausing their work or a group of townsfolk setting aside their tasks, all rising to honor the presence of one deemed worthy of esteem. This shared movement reinforced bonds of community while reaffirming the social structures that held it together. In some settings, the act of rising also involved subtle variations, bowing the head, placing a hand on the chest, or adopting a specific posture after standing. These additional gestures layered meaning onto the simple rise, deepening the expression of respect and submission. Imagine the nuanced choreography of medieval etiquette, where every movement spoke volumes about relationships and roles. Yet this custom was not merely about obedience, it was also about belonging. Imagine the sense of unity created as a group rose together, their synchronized motion a testament to shared values and mutual recognition. The ritual reminded all present of their place within the social fabric, fostering harmony even amid the rigid hierarchies. Failing to rise or doing so inadequately could have serious consequences. Imagine the whispered judgments and the subtle shifts in standing or favor that followed a perceived slight. Social tensions could surface quietly but palpably, underscoring the importance of mastering these unspoken codes. For newcomers or those outside established circles, learning the ritual was a vital step toward acceptance and respect. The physicality of rising also connected individuals to the moment in a visceral way. Imagine the feel of wooden benches beneath knees, the steady breath as bodies moved upright, the exchange of glances acknowledging the shared understanding. It was a moment of transition, both literal and symbolic, marking the entrance of authority and the collective recognition that social order was present and active. As you step back from this scene, the quiet hall seems alive with these subtle yet profound movements. The ritual of rising from a bench upon a superior's entrance was more than tradition. It was a language of respect, a silent dialogue that shaped medieval interactions. In a world where hierarchy was carefully observed, this single motion spoke clearly and universally. Thus, the act of rising was a quiet declaration, one performed instinctively, yet rich with meaning. It bridged individuals and authority, underscored social bonds, and maintained the delicate balance of respect that defined medieval gatherings. In those moments, standing was not just posture but presence, a testament to the enduring power of silent ritual. The subtle code of whose feet touched the hearth first in winter. Imagine a cold winter's evening in a medieval great hall, where the low flames of the hearth cast a flickering amber light against the rough stone walls. The air carries a faint, comforting scent of burning oak mixed with the crisp chill that seeps in from the narrow windows. Outside, wind whistles through the village streets, but inside, the hearth's warmth is the center of life, a small sun around which the household's rhythms turn. Picture the scene unfolding as family and guests gather, shedding heavy cloaks and boots, their breath forming fleeting clouds in the cool air before the fire's glow softens the cold. Here, the warmth is precious, a scarce comfort against winter's bite, and its possession is governed not by chance but by an unspoken code understood as clearly as any spoken law. Without a word spoken, everyone knows the delicate rules that govern who may approach the hearth first. The highest in rank, the lord or lady of the house, claims the warmest spot nearest the fire, their boots or slippers touching the stones that radiate the most heat. This place is more than comfort. It is a symbol of status, a tangible mark of authority and privilege. To be closest to the hearth is to hold a place of prominence in the household's hierarchy. Imagine the children watching this quietly, their eyes keen and observant. Long before any formal lesson, they learn whose feet are allowed nearest the fire and whose must remain farther back. The eldest son, the honored guest, the steward, each has a place dictated by birth, favor, or responsibility. Even the youngest apprentices and servants understand to remove their boots at the threshold of this sacred warmth, knowing their place lies beyond the glowing circle. The subtlety of this code lies in its silence. There is no need for explicit instruction or confrontation. The boundaries are marked by tradition and mutual recognition. To breach these unspoken rules would be to risk offense, a disruption of order that could ripple through the household's delicate social fabric. Instead, respect flows naturally, woven into the daily dance of presence and absence near the hearth. Imagine the slow, deliberate movements of those gathering by the fire, the measured step forward of the Lord's boots pressing into the warm stones, the gentle slide of the lady's feet beside him, the respectful pause of others as they settle into places with cooler shadows. The hearth's heat becomes a language, a silent but powerful expression of rank and belonging. Historical accounts suggest that such customs were widespread across medieval Europe, extending beyond mere comfort to reinforce the social hierarchies that governed every aspect of life. The hearth was a microcosm of society itself, a center where privilege was felt not only in words or titles but in the warmth beneath one's feet. As the evening deepens and shadows lengthen, the fire's glow casts a cozy spell over the room. The warmth that clings to the stones seems almost alive, a guardian of tradition and order. Those nearest the hearth bask in its light and heat, while others accept their place in the cooler margins, all part of the rhythm that shapes their lives. Imagine yourself there now, feeling the contrast between the fire's embrace and the cooler air beyond its reach. The silent code of whose feet touch the hearth first is a constant lesson, whispered not in voices but in gestures and positioning, a reminder that in medieval life, as in all times, power and respect often speak loudest through the quietest acts. The practice of standing bareheaded when decrees were read. Imagine the crisp morning air filling a bustling medieval town square, where townsfolk gather in hushed anticipation. At the center stands the town crier, his voice poised to carry official proclamations through the crowd. In this moment, an unspoken but deeply ingrained custom unfolds. The practice of standing bareheaded as decrees are read aloud, a silent acknowledgement of the authority that governs their lives. The act of removing one's hat before the crier was more than mere habit. It was a mute, respectful recognition of power and order. Imagine a diverse assembly, merchants, artisans, peasants, all pausing in their daily routines to lift their head coverings, exposing their faces and bowing their posture ever so slightly. This collective gesture spoke volumes without a single word, binding the community in a shared understanding of law and governance. Hats and caps in medieval society were markers of identity and status, often crafted with care and worn as symbols of one's place. To remove such a personal emblem in public was an act of humility, a quiet concession to the reach of official authority. Imagine the subtle tension in the air, where personal pride met the necessity of obedience, and individuals momentarily set aside their private identities to acknowledge the collective rule. The crier's proclamations might announce new taxes, curfews, or royal edicts, words carrying weighty consequences. By standing bareheaded, listeners physically manifested their submission to the governing powers, reinforcing the social contract that held towns and kingdoms together. This gesture was a bridge between ruler and ruled, a moment where invisible hierarchies became visible through shared ritual. Even without direct command, this practice was enforced through communal expectation. Those who neglected to remove their hats risked silent disapproval or social censure, marking themselves as disrespectful or defiant. Imagine the watchful eyes of neighbors and officials alike, ensuring that the ritual was upheld, preserving the order it symbolized. Beyond the immediate audience, this tradition connected communities across regions, reflecting a widespread cultural language of respect and hierarchy. From village squares to grand city plazas, standing bareheaded became a universal signifier that the voice being heard carried the weight of law and governance. This custom also extended into other formal settings, courtrooms, council chambers, and religious ceremonies, where the removal of headwear signaled reverence and attentiveness. It was a physical reminder that authority demanded not only hearing but also respect. Over time, as fashions and social structures evolved, the practice persisted in various forms, leaving traces in modern customs of removing hats indoors or during national anthems. These echoes remind us of a past where such small acts were woven into the very fabric of societal order. So, when you envision the crowd standing bareheaded in a medieval square, imagine the unspoken power carried in that silent gesture, a collective bow of respect, a recognition of authority's reach, and a shared moment where society's rules were both heard and honored without a single word spoken. The habit of carrying tools or emblems that spoke of one's station. Imagine yourself walking through a crowded medieval street, where the chatter of merchants and the clatter of hooves blend into a lively chorus. The air carries scents of fresh bread, leather, and smoke, while the colors of fabrics and banners swirl around you. Amid this vibrant scene, every person carries a silent message, not through words, but through the tools and emblems they bear. A tradesman's hammer hanging from his belt, a noble's signet ring gleaming on a finger, these objects spoke volumes about one's place in the social order, quietly declaring identity, status, and purpose without uttering a single word. In medieval society, where rigid hierarchies governed daily life, visible symbols were essential. Imagine a blacksmith approaching the market square, his leather apron worn and stained, a heavy hammer secured at his side. That hammer was not merely a tool but a statement of craft and mastery, signaling to all who saw it the bearer's skill and role within the community. Similarly, imagine a noble walking past, the gleam of a finely crafted signet ring catching the light. That ring bore a family crest, a mark of authority and lineage, a key to sealing documents and commanding respect. These objects functioned as badges of identity and authority, guiding interactions and shaping perceptions. Imagine the quiet deference shown by a merchant spotting the noble's ring or the respect accorded to a craftsman recognized by his tools. Such visual cues helped maintain social order in bustling environments where words might be hurried or lost in noise. The tools and emblems provided immediate clarity, a form of nonverbal communication crucial in a world without modern identification. Beyond practical identification, these carried objects held personal and symbolic meaning. Imagine the pride a tradesman felt wearing his tools after years of apprenticeship, each dent and scratch a testament to labor and learning. For nobles, signet rings connected them to ancestral heritage, embodying history and authority in a small but powerful object. These emblems anchored individuals to their lineage and social duties, reinforcing the invisible bonds that held medieval society together. The habit of carrying such items also influenced daily behavior and self-perception. Imagine the care taken to maintain a finely wrought hammer or the ceremonial use of a signet ring during official matters. These objects were extensions of identity, shaping how their bearers moved through the world and were received by others. They were constant companions, reminders of responsibility and belonging. Even in silence, the tools at a belt or the ring on a hand told stories of work, status, and place. Imagine a craftsman pausing to adjust his belt, a subtle gesture that echoed centuries of tradition. Imagine a noble subtly displaying a ring during a gathering, signaling alliances and power without a single word. These small acts formed a rich tapestry of communication, binding individuals to community and history. As you imagine yourself once more amid this medieval scene, the sounds and smells surrounding you, you can appreciate the quiet language spoken through tools and emblems. They were more than objects. They were the visible markers of identity and station, essential to navigating the complex social landscape of their time. In this way, the habit of carrying tools or emblems was a silent but powerful dialogue, a continual assertion of who one was and where one belonged, woven seamlessly into the rhythm of medieval life.